fascinating as hell. It's amazing, but it's so fucking weird.
Hold that thought, Rose, because we are just live. This second, thanks to the miracle that is the automatic go live function, as opposed to allowing it when I click it.
See, I press the button because I always start late.
Oh. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Fake Accents Unite. As you may have heard in the background there, we're joined today by Rose of Dawn. Good evening.
Hello.
We're also joined by Owine, fresh off his appearance from last week. Good evening.
Shemai, pronoun Darpo.
And of course, my long-suffering co-host, the Britisher. Good evening, sir.
Well, good evening. You see, I obviously didn't think this through, didn't I? Because I should have had a soundtrack of lots of shouting and machine gun fire and some jet engines roaring, and then done a sort of shouty voice pretending to be at Kabul airport.
The British are calling from Kabul airport. London, are you hearing? Do you read?
All I have with me is my trusty Sopwith camel.
Well, I did mention earlier on Twitter.
This is no longer the great game.
I addressed Shinobi, but he obviously won't have seen it yet. Because, how should we say, Shinobi, like myself, is of a somewhat older vintage.
Yeah, you're ancient, yes.
So the two of us, we kind of remember things of on television of yesteryear. And one of the most fascinating things with the fall of the Taliban 20 years ago was, of course, the liberation of Kabul by John Simpson, the correspondent, the BBC correspondent. Basically, it became a sort of joke, to sort of say John Simpson liberated Kabul, because what it meant was that, just like this time round, the opposition, the defence, so to speak, just melted away. And at some point, John Simpson, with his camera crew, just started walking. And he literally walked along one of these sort of highways into Kabul. They found one or two dead bodies along the way or whatever, but walked into Kabul and just ended up in Kabul. The sort of first Westerner in Kabul was a guy with a sort of, flat jacket with BBC written on it and a camera crew with him. And it's sort of important to remember those things, because now when everybody is completely startled as to, well, where did the defence go? Well, where was it last time?
Didn't John Simpson sneak, I don't know whether it was in Iraq or Afghanistan, didn't he sneak over a border disguised as a woman in a burqa? Or am I thinking of a different reporter?
This doesn't ring a bell with John Simpson, but I could well imagine that some reporter will have done the sort of, burqa job.
But they were actually, carried on this, they had, all these, different men, kind of carrying him. He just kind of sat on this chair, just dressed in, full on, niqab.
So
I'm sure it was John Simpson. He looked like.
So there was some male reporter pretending to be a Pakistani princess being carried across some mountain pass to be wed to some tribal elder in Herat.
It was really, really stupid. I just vividly remember it, and I'm just not sure whether it was invasion of Afghanistan or the invasion of Iraq. It was one of those ones, and I'm sure it was John Simpson. But
I'm amazed
given the mention of Herat, there is a guy, he's obviously now a rather elderly man with a white beard, but he must have quite a history, and he seems to be one of these sort of regional warlords in Afghanistan. And he popped up again on the news the other day, and yes,
yes, it is John Simpson.
His moniker in Afghanistan apparently is the Lion of Herat. So this is a guy who was fighting the Soviets. He appears to have quite a fierce reputation. But yes, if you think of it, that's quite a name to have, isn't it? If your people refer to you as the Lion of whatever place you come from.
Yeah, I was right. It was John Simpson. That's how he got into Afghanistan.
So that's how he got into Afghanistan.
Yeah,
from there, he kind of observed the war and then eventually walked into an abandoned Kabul. Yes.
Hold on. Let me just where is the chat? Stream chat. Right, there it is. That's a photo of him in the burqa.
Let me. I will. For the benefit of people.
Well, I shall have to take your word for it.
It's literally him. The BBC even did an article about how it went on display.
I think whether we take your word for it or the BBC's word for it, we have to take someone's word for it, because I think it's kind of self-explanatory.
British, I was going to say, I'm amazed you're not in the middle of Kabul wondering where the Russians are. As in, you're there, you've just come out of the Raj, sitting there wondering why the Russians haven't crossed.
Well, I mean, who knows? That might be the next move.
It's the great game. It continues.
I mean, one of the big questions, of course, and I find it bizarre that no one has really sort of talked about it in media that I've seen anywhere.
Is this the fact that Biden is now being referred to as the Lion of America?
Of course, yes. No, in this case, I mean, who is supporting the Taliban? Because I mean, last time around when the Taliban defeated the Soviets, I mean, they could never have done so without American support, and we all know it.
Well, hasn't the Taliban been getting support from Pakistan and Iran?
Yeah, I reckon the Iranians have probably buried the hatchet.
I don't think the Iranians have been supporting the Taliban. I don't think they get on.
Apparently they've mended bridges, though. Apparently,
have they?
That's what's re-support.
The Pakistanis have always supported the Taliban. I mean, it's a movement that was founded in Pakistan. But you can't help but think that in order to pull this off, you need a big brother.
Yeah, I mean, they're wealthier than they ever been.
Greater global power that has a bit of oomph, that is helping, with material, with finance, but also with logistics and whatever. One of the things that I always find so remarkable is when ISIS were fighting in Syria and whatever, we get pictures of the fighters and things like that. What we never see is the lorry convoys providing food and ammunition. Do you understand what I mean? The actual logistics of war. And when it comes to sort of organizations like that in Syria, or when it comes to the Taliban in Afghanistan, you kind of wonder, how do they work it? Who's behind this? Who's the brains behind this entire operation? Because somehow, I know these are fairly tough nuts, but nonetheless, these are kind of, country bumpkins who've been given the basic training as to how to fight.
I mean, like, America has a history of losing to country bumpkins, let's not forget.
Yes, but I mean, country bumpkins need to be organised.
Yeah,
you can just...
The thing is that...
To be fair, they are the original country bumpkin to have beaten the...
they fought against the Soviets, they fought against the Americans.
I'm all about the
Americans. So kind of the obvious question then is, like, which power is going to be the next one to try and go in there? Oh, China, yeah. I mean, China's already said that they're going to formally recognize the Taliban government. I mean, so has Russia, but I'm sure that the 1980s still stings.
When it comes to Russia, that's a sort of strange thing, because just today I saw a report which was sort of more of an overarching geopolitical look by a BBC reporter, in which he referred to, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan and whatever, to the north of Afghanistan. And that then goes into sort of Central Asia, which is very much still a sort of Russian-controlled domain. The Russia still tries to keep a grip on these Central Asian republics. But of course, they are Muslim. And if you now sort of spark off something like that in Afghanistan, there is the possibility of sort of cross-contamination. So the Russians will not at all be interested in having this sort of super Islamic presence to the south of some of what she would see as being her client states. I mean, the Chinese could be playing all sorts of shenanigans. We know that they are interested in that Central Asian area because they're doing their Belt and Road project right through the middle of it, aren't they?
Oh yeah. So that's, I mean, China. I think it's going to be fascinating if China properly gets involved. I don't think they'll be sending, like soldiers in or anything like that just yet. But the thing is, the Soviet Union didn't go well in Afghanistan. America is this is arguably the biggest disaster in American international policy since Vietnam, if not worse, because of how long this has gone on for and how much it has cost.
Oh, I don't know.
But China's not used to this. China, bear in mind, China hasn't fought a proper war.
China hasn't lost a war, but China also hasn't fought a war.
China's attempts at foreign wars have basically been Korea is the main one, obviously, and then Vietnam. They had their own. Let's not forget, China had its own Vietnam.
Oh yeah, and then they also had a skirmish with the Russians in 1970.
The Vietnam communists have separated from the Chinese communists and now are their own branch of communism.
Oh yeah,
more pro-American than they used to be.
I think it is fair. I think it is fair to mention, because I mean, here we all are sounding rather British, talking about the failure of the Soviets and the failure of the Americans in Afghanistan. But in all fairness, there was a prior failure by also a rather large imperial force.
You have to realise that in the case of that, it is Britain has failed, but England is still fine, right? That's the way it works.
But I would caution against sort of saying that this was the biggest since Vietnam, because I suspect that Iraq was a much bigger disaster. Simply because it's a much more important place, and it's in a much more strategic position, and clearly no one could hold on to that either. So I think Iraq more than likely tops Afghanistan when it comes to the proverbial hitting the fan and everybody eventually having to get out.
Or is it
Very much?
Well, Iraq did lead to basically the creation of ISIS.
I can't think that India's going to be particularly happy about this either. Indian Twitter is just raging.
Indian geopolitics right now is interesting because it's all centered on the rivalry of China, because there's an understanding within India that China are attempting to basically choke India and surround India with Chinese allies. And so if Afghanistan was another one to fall into the Chinese sphere of influence, that would be a big hit to India. And going into the next century, this will probably be the big kind of rivalry.
I think if Afghanistan if Afghanistan sort of upsets the Indians, I don't think it's because of China. I think their main rival as such, the thing that they feel in their gut is Pakistan.
Exactly my thoughts, British. Yes.
Pakistan invented the Taliban, and if Afghanistan effectively now chummies up with Pakistan again, that's what the Indians are going to feel. Now, I perfectly understand what you mean, Owain, with, sort of in greater geopolitical terms, there may be sort of a Chinese hand in there somewhere. But I think when it comes to the Indians, the one thing they see is their chief rival now effectively getting their buddy back.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think Biden should be doing his speech at any minute. I mean, there's probably going to be a delay because there already is with these things.
Has he announced he's going to hold a speech? But the last I knew that it was somewhere in the next few days.
Is he going to resign?
He announced it earlier today. So it's at 3:45 p.m. Eastern time, it is now 3:46 p.m.
I wouldn't.
Eastern.
It is.
There's going to be a delay. But all I'm saying is be prepared that there's going to be Biden. And I'm fascinated to see whether he drops the blame on Trump.
So the White House YouTube channel has a stream up called President Biden Delivers Remarks on Afghanistan that went live half an hour ago. Clearly, they are trying to undermine this much more popular stream. Never mind the fact that they've got
Yeah.
45,000
my
people
thoughts
there.
exactly.
But they're being quite heavily ratioed already before anything's happened in terms
Well,
of
there's nothing new. That's nothing new for the White House.
Most popular
No,
president
no.
ever, ladies and
Yeah,
gentlemen.
I know, right? Everyone. Oh God.
But
Right, let's-
we are waiting. It's blank at the moment, so we shall have to wait and see how it goes. But like I did notice a video going around Twitter, which was sort of Biden's previous comments on the Taliban, on Afghanistan, etc. There was one which was, of course, him saying that you will never see a helicopter airlifting people off the U.S. embassy in Kabul, and of course, then there are now pictures of that. But additionally, there was an interview he gave before he was president on the whole Afghanistan situation, where he's remarkably lucid and talks quite well, and people say this is exactly how a president should be speaking. But they're obfuscating it. It's not an up-to-date take from him. It is something from a while ago that they're just not publicising the date on, and then people have obviously picked it out and that sort of thing. But I haven't actually gone through too much of it myself. I'm struggling to remember the points he made now. But again, I don't think there's any way in which America comes out well on this. The kind of fall of the American hegemon when it comes to the perceived ability of them to maintain world stability is I think something of quite considerable concern to everyone involved, right?
Well, when it comes to that, I think that was already proven in Iraq, wasn't it? That how should we say, America has the foremost machine on Earth when it comes to smashing up an existing power. It can dissect it effectively. I mean, how many weeks did it take them to take out Iraq? It was terrifying at the time when it happened. Everybody just went, my God, and quite a few people were then beginning to think aloud. As in, what other regimes could they take out? But then reality hit, as in they can take them out. But what they can't do is hold them together thereafter. For that, you need massive armies. And that's just not the way modern warfare has developed.
Warfare?
It's much more concentrated forces with very high tech.
I like the idea of modern warfare where we
yes.
fight with werewolves. But it being more,
or you just wear them down.
But
yes.
being more serious, obviously this is a subject of some debate whilst I was in the military, for instance, and the kind of prevailing knowledge is, and people do know, that air power is what all of the Western nations go for because it, as you say, it makes a spectacle, shock and awe. It makes a lot of damage. It's very low risk, especially when you're bombing people without effective anti-aircraft, right? And you have this unparalleled ability to just drop bombs and kind of destroy an entire area. However, human beings are quite clever, and so when you start doing things like hiding your terrorist cells within hospitals, for instance, or in close proximity to orphanages and that sort of thing, and even though the US is not exactly famed for its appreciation of collateral damage, certainly other Western nations, particularly the European powers, are, and the UN doesn't particularly take kindly to people glassing entire cities to deal with a couple of thousand insurgents. So the reality of it ends up being, can you take the ground and then can you hold it? And America and, as I say, most of the West, who are relying on cheap, effective air power because they don't want a lengthy stay. And people say, $3.2 trillion, etc., etc. Yeah, but it is working off of an election cycle where politicians are thinking about how much is it going to cost for the next 4 years, as opposed to how much is it going to cost to end it quickly. Not that, as I'm sure people with a more conspiratorial mindset will say, some will say, oh, they want to drag it out, especially a lot of these military contractors who are getting incredibly rich off of the entire enterprise anyway. So, yes, we have a chronic issue with a lack of land-air integration, which is what we call it, and a chronic lack of our ability to hold ground once we have it. And then, of course, the Americans with their hoity-toity values, claiming that they can instill the values of decency and democracy into the locals, which is obviously
one might almost compare it to the American War of Independence. You know, where the Brits had an army that time and again just wiped the Americans off the field. But as such, they were ground down by effectively not being able to control the ground.
Yeah. And this is a huge issue, but as I say, they're not interested.
I just mean there is a certain irony there, isn't there?
A little, yes. They're not interested in holding the ground, however. That's one of the key concerns, I think, people see.
Well, this was interesting because it's a thought I expressed yesterday, and V expressed today. You know, I mean, who knows? Perhaps he's been watching my program. I can hope. But you know, now we're getting a lot of talk by the left regarding how we should have stayed there in Afghanistan. We have betrayed the people of Afghanistan, particularly the women and the little girls who won't be receiving any schooling and whatever. And I just thought, well, hang on, if you're actually there in order to change their lifestyles, in order to change the way they operate as people.
Yeah, I know where you're going with this.
Colonialism.
That is colonialism.
That is colonialism.
It is.
Now, if the left is constantly out there berating the old European powers for their imperialist crimes and their colonialism, and yet the moment that push comes to shove, they are demanding it themselves. They're just not calling it such. There is a certain level of hypocrisy there that just screams at you.
Yes. But then nobody has ever accused the left of being consistent, or at least or consistent with their stated values. At the very least, you know, they have other consistencies. But
I mean, that is also one of the things that I think also, you know, contributes to that whole thing of controlling the ground, as you say. If you are a force that isn't really interested in setting up sort of, you know, imperial dominions, so you're never declaring yourself as here forever, and therefore your opponent knows that you will leave.
Well, the other.
Then effectively, all your opponent needs to do is wait you out.
Apologies to everyone for vibrations coming through, as I know that's slightly frustrating. I'll just mute that. There we go. I got in lots of trouble last week for my phone going off midstream. But yeah. So the other notable thing. Did you see about the scholarships scheme, Britisher?
Yes, I saw your tweet. I remember that. Was it Dominic Raab who had closed down a scholarship scheme?
So
and immediately there was sort of complaints that he is making the situation even worse. That now people who would wish to come from Afghanistan on a scholarship will not be able to do so. And you kind of pointed out saying, you know, wouldn't that be open to militants now?
Well, it's like they were pointing out a lot of the people in the comments. Let me see this sort of thing. There is no credible or forgivable excuse for this refusal to grant visas to these students at this time. This
yeah, I think Boris has intervened at least in part of that or whatever. That some some visas that were already granted will be honoured.
Yeah, of course they will, because they
then
were.
At least one knows. So it isn't a blanket ban on those people that have already been accepted, because in that case one knows that these people are more than likely not Taliban. But yes, as of now, any applications coming in, yes, you would be absolutely insane to accept this stuff.
It must be, because as soon as any Afghan national is here on a student visa, they would then be able to claim asylum. This government is sick. That's right. Our government, that famously anti-refugee, anti-asylum seeker government that we have. The ones that are rigorously enforcing our borders right now.
Can we agree on one thing here? As long as the Taliban don't allow terrorists, now whatever we think of the likeliness or not, but as long as the Taliban don't allow terrorists within to set up within their territory and start camps again and start try to fly planes into skyscrapers, as long as that isn't the case, why should we be bothered?
Sorry, say again?
Well, as long as they keep it to themselves, why should we be bothered?
Yes, as long as the Taliban just set up in Kabul and start governing Afghanistan whichever way they want, then it's really irrelevant to us, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, in the grand scheme of things, yes.
Because what I was saying yesterday is that's the reason we went in. The reason we went into Afghanistan had nothing to do with the Taliban. It was not the Taliban who had attacked New York.
We were after, wasn't it?
We went into Afghanistan to get Al-Qaeda, to get Osama bin Laden, and so on. The Taliban just happened to be the people who were in charge of Afghanistan at the time.
They were also...
and have resisted us ever since.
Didn't they try and offer bin Laden? Or like they tried to do some sort of offer with Al Qaeda, but Americans just ignored it and then kind of used it as a pretense to going in. I'm sure I've read that somewhere.
I'm not sure. I remember hearing at the time that some people said that with these sort of ancient, ideas of honor and whatever in that part of the world, it would actually have been very hard for the for the Taliban or any Afghan organization as such to basically offer up sort of any fellow Muslims or anything like that, and that therefore it was almost an impossibility once the West made its ultimatum and said hand these people over or else we're coming in. But yes, I mean I felt the West was perfectly justified in going in. But I just feel we got totally sidetracked into, we need to make sure that women's rights and a secular society, and just, this is nonsense. This has nothing to do with the actual aim for which we came in. So if, after all this time now, the Taliban takes over and basically in order to avoid any future war, now says we won't allow any terrorists to set up, then, strictly speaking, we shouldn't have a problem with them, should we? Because in the end, it's up to the Afghans to decide what they want for a government and how they want to deal with their women.
Yes, but
you know
that the left isn't going to tolerate... Well, they might support them at different times, but they're not going to tolerate the fact that, we had an influence in the area and now they're throwing gays off buildings and, shaming women, etc., that sort of thing.
Well, funnily enough, the Taliban aren't really very big on throwing gays off buildings, aren't they?
Well, there's this whole thing about...
Well, I believe, there are all sorts of uses for gays in
Oh, you mean the pederasty thing? Yeah, the paedophilia.
Taliban sort of military circles.
No. Was that the Taliban? I thought that was the people that we tried to get in, because I know, I've got friends who were in Afghan who had to be who were sworn to.
Sorry to interrupt. Biden's about to speak. He's walking out. He's just taken off his mask.
Overjoy.
He's just taken off his mask. I'll put my mic on mute because I want to listen to what he has to say.
All right.
Shall we just continue the conversation, or
yeah.
later, or what do you want to do?
We'll have a listen later. Rose can.
Because otherwise, I think we're going to have a lot of dead air here.
Yes.
Sorry.
Rose can have a listen in the background and then be our correspondent with the White House.
Yeah.
Oh, how about that? But yeah, okay. So.
No, with the
so,
gays, I think it's almost a sort of Afghan cultural thing.
There is that.
I think that's pretty much the Taliban and the Western-backed military had a certain contingent of them in the army for how do we call it, leisure purposes.
Leisure. I mean, you're being very, very polite, Britisher. But yeah, so I have friends who were in Afghanistan who were basically told there was nothing you could do, and you just had to deal with the fact that you could hear the boys screaming at night. Sorry, chaps, for there's a fake accents unite. Favourite light-hearted entertainment show, etc. But that these are the people that we effectively got into bed with, and we knew.
Well, but I think that was also one of the problems, that the regime that we were propping up was dreadfully corrupt, and we were kind of dealing with them because, well, they're the sort of least worst option. These are the only people we can do business with. We find this time and again. I mean, when the Americans were in Vietnam, do you remember there's that famous photograph of, isn't it a general or a colonel of the Vietnamese army just blowing someone's brains out with a gun? So we one of the problems is that it's almost kind of the worst people that you can possibly find who become the folks with whom you have to do business, which invariably causes a problem with the local population, because you're imposing these hideous people on them. And in that regard, that lessens to a certain extent the threat that the Taliban pose, because the Taliban are hideous, but then at the same time we've got these utterly corrupt people who are running things.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Basically, when you have a democracy in Afghanistan, you have a democracy of warlords. There is no difference between them and the Taliban really at that point.
But the Taliban regime was loathed. It was deeply unpopular. So that all these things kind of play into the hands of the Taliban.
Didn't Afghanistan used to be a monarchy?
Yes, it did in the long distant time. Yes, I thought there was perhaps a case of having a monarchy when the West went in and sought to try to create something, but instead, of course, the Americans being the lead force, it of course had to be democracy.
See, the Americans
and you felt that a monarchy might have worked better precisely because of this entire loyalty thing.
Sorry,
whom are you loyal to?
I just wanted to jump back in. I can't bother listening to it anymore. Yeah, he's moved on to blaming Trump.
Oh, for goodness sake. I inherited a deal that President Trump negotiated with the Taliban.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
We knew this was where they
so his argument was basically, we were never there to nation build. We were there just to hunt for terrorists. Which seems a bit insane when they the amount of money that they spent apparently training up the Afghan army. That kind of comes under nation building. I'm sorry, but if you're going to be training up an army, who is their opponent in that country? The Taliban. So if they
Well, I don't know if training up an army is necessarily nation building, but I think a lot of the other things, when it comes to women's rights, building girls' schools, setting up a parliament, things like that goes under nation building. If it's a matter of setting up an army, that could be argued to be, denying a space to terrorists, basically trying to undo a failed state and actually create a force. Except, of course, yes, it didn't turn out to be much of a force at the end. But I think, one of the things that we simply have to take for granted here is that both sides will just blame each other. And, I'm not at all surprised that Biden would be saying, oh, well, Trump. And I'm not at all surprised that the other side, that Trump will be saying, "Oh, Biden."
Right.
But in the end, if you pull your troops out, and you have an opponent who is well organized and is really the only candidate on the ground to be able to take over, either way, it would have ended up with the Taliban taking over the country.
Yeah.
They would have taken over again
You know
because there
that
was no structure left in place.
they're
Because America's
chanting-
a crap at putting structures in.
They're chanting "Death to America" in the streets again now. Good grief.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I would say it went enormously fast, but that is because, yes, these are basically tribal deals that went on. Who do you side with? So you will have had some tribal elders of some tribe somewhere going, well, hang on, I'm hedging my bets, let's see. But the moment it becomes clear, hang on, one side is leaving, the others are clearly in the resurgence, there is only really one horse to back here, then immediately all of them, swung to the other side. And when you look at the Afghan army, I mean, yes, they didn't cover themselves in glory, but in all fairness, what chance did they have? I mean, you heard of some outposts early on that swung to the Taliban. And what had happened there was that they were, in fact, standing up and fighting the Taliban until they were out of ammunition, until they started running out of food, and they were surrounded by the Taliban. And they were looking to their own government saying, when's food and ammunition coming? Sorry, no luck. Well,
So-
what do you expect them to do? I mean...
so apparently he started with we went into Afghanistan with clear goals. We were not there for nation building. Oh, boy.
Yeah, you can't say that after 20 years.
No,
I'm
you
sorry,
can't.
it's just not credible.
You can't go there and say, "Oh yeah, we occupied a country for 20 years and we just didn't bother to build a nation."
Yeah, I mean, if you had gone in, I really think that he is right insofar that was the initial goal. That was why one went in.
We were there for
But that's not why one got stuck there for 20 years.
It became
and-
essentially a dominion of the U.S. empire.
Well, the reason we got stuck there was actually politics in the West. It wasn't for anything that was happening in Afghanistan. So I would say perhaps until the point where under Obama they managed to get Osama bin Laden, because for a long time obviously they just didn't know where he was. So
Yes,
up until
and
that point,
then of course they
there
found
might
him.
have been
They found him at his house.
Yes, they found him near a Pakistani military base. Yes, but until that point, they might have had an argument for staying there, because they wanted him. He was clearly the head they wanted to claim. But once they had him, and Al Qaeda was clearly smashed in Afghanistan, why did they stay there? And my argument is Hillary Clinton, Harriet Harman, in both the US and the UK here. Oh, we need to do something for the women of Iraq. So not Iraq, Afghanistan. And yes, we got stuck there due to Western politics, Western internal politics. Nobody wanted to be the one to abandon the poor schoolgirls of Afghanistan to the Taliban. But the thing was that had nothing to do with our national interest. And yes, it's what they call mission creep. We went in with one goal, and then completely lost sight of that. And now Biden is suddenly trying to sort of pivot back to the original goal and say, well, that's why we were there. And you feel, well, had one left at the earliest possible opportunity, had one effectively said to the Taliban, okay, you can have the place again, but you touch terrorism again and we'll be back with the B-52s. That would have been an argument. After 20 years and all the stuff we've seen, the amount of academics they've shipped into Kabul University trying to teach, God only knows what to the natives. No, I'm sorry, this was nation building.
Yeah.
It became nation building. It wasn't the original goal. But it becoming nation building was the major mistake that was made.
So what do people think about whether Biden blaming this on Trump is actually going to stick or not?
Well, it'll stick in.
It's going to stick with his side.
It will stick in so far as well as the media run with it, because
Yes.
like
that's
what the official record says is what people will remember, and that's one of the frustrating things about the whole lot. Is it doesn't matter. Like, nobody really knows what Trump is doing now. He's certainly not got a voice. He's not able to rebut anything. And whilst they've got a universalist platform where the people the anchors on CNN cry with joy at the beautiful words spewing forth from the gob of Biden.
Well, I think we'll have to. This is almost a case of wait and see, because when it comes to the fall of Afghanistan and the fall of Kabul, Biden has come in for a lot of stick from the mainstream media. So they do seem to have basically reacted, but now comes the question, now that he comes forward with his warm words and blames Trump, do they all fall back in line, or do they begin to see him as a political liability? But do you understand what I mean? If they've got the feeling we're backing a losing horse here, that's when they might start trying to distance themselves.
Well, there's the Democrats can always fall back on having him admitted to a care home, and then having Kamala Harris take over.
Well, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much the Democrats want Kamala Harris.
Well, no, but that's irrelevant, isn't it? Like, they will swallow anything as long as it keeps them in power.
Well, that's just it. I don't know if Kamala Harris is capable of keeping them in power. I think she might be a worse losing horse than Biden.
But they'll just cheat again. Like, it's irrelevant.
Well, you know my opinion on that.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna do some. I'm gonna do some super chats to just kind of break it up and bring in some other opinions and a little bit of humour. So. We got Sidscowan, who comes in and says 161 seconds late, to the surprise of only those of equivalent intelligence to non-reactive minerals.
I've got a feeling that Sidscowan was more than likely in central Kabul when the Taliban arrived, with a watch, going,
You're late.
You're
exactly this many seconds late.
1,478 hours late.
You were supposed to be here in 2005. Jedi Knight Anakin Cringewalker says, Afghanistan cost the equivalent of 33 Apollo missions. We could have had Apollo 18 through 50 instead of losing to goat shepherds who haven't invented the shoe yet. Well, no, they have invented the shoe. They like to throw them. Isn't that right? But, yeah, no.
It's not Iraq.
Was Iraq the shoe event? Well, I know. Yeah, probably.
The event is definitely the Middle East. They like throwing shoes at things, or touching the sole of a shoe onto whatever it is they don't like. I don't know if that is the same thing with the Afghans, but there is one thing you might like to hear about the Afghans.
Do I want to just consider this deeply?
Please go ahead. Yep.
Do I want to? Do I want to know this about the Afghans?
I think this one you want to hear.
Go on.
Just due to the connection, at least the lingual connection with myself. When I learnt this, I realised that we should never have been in Afghanistan. And what I mean is, us, the Brits. I think, as allies, we more than likely would have had to have been a part of the fighting of going to conquer Afghanistan. But when it came to peacekeeping, we should never have been there. And the reason we should never have been there is the same that if you have, serious disturbances in Jerusalem, you don't bring in the German police to help out. And what I mean with that is that the Brits still have a tremendous reputation in Afghanistan. There was a reason why we were taking such losses in Helmand province. And that is because we are the hate figures.
Yes, and we decided
from the 19th century.
The Helmand thing was just absolute stupidity.
Oh yes,
it was the stupidest move we could have.
If I can just finish this because you'll like this bit.
Go on.
What is the worst What is the worst insult in Afghanistan?
I do not
Old
know.
English.
Son of a Britisher.
Son of a Britisher. Amazing. I like that. I mean, to be fair, I can see why that.
What have they got against you?
Well,
So we all know British can't go to Afghanistan, otherwise there may be a nice rooftop waiting for him.
what
So,
Britisher did whilst he was 20 years old is now a matter of public record.
Yeah, no, so
in Afghanistan.
this is how they are still linked to history and whatever, and therefore the appearance of the British as peacekeepers was one of the dumbest things in military history.
So,
Because we were a red flag to a bull.
yeah. So for people who don't know, Helmand Province was one of those places that we went into. Where was it? Late 19th century, was it, Britisher? I'm thinking of specifically. There was one, the last big war we had there, although for us it was
I
not.
mean, you're
The
sort
Afghan-
of, you're
the
sort of
Anglo-Afghan
talking
war.
1860s or something like that, I
So,
think.
yeah, right, exactly. So mid to late 19th century. And
now I attempt to head up
Helmand,
the Russians.
Helmand was one of those particular provinces where we did a lot of damage. And of course, we don't learn about this in school. We forgot all about it, etc. And then, of course, we came
We all
back.
suffered a lot of damage down there.
And then, yeah. And then we turn up in the 2000s, and we say we're the British, and we're here. And they say, "Are you back to finish the job?" Because and soldiers would be asked this by going around because their children learn about it. Because to them, it was one of the most. It's an enormous footnote in their history, whereas to us it's nothing more than an asterisk, right?
Well, it is the equivalent of their patriotic war, like the Russians with their great patriotic war to free the motherland from the Nazis. It's the equivalent for them of that. And we therefore arrived saying we're the peacekeepers. And it's because of that we suffered the highest losses per capita in Afghanistan of any military. Because yes, I mean, if the Taliban were looking for volunteers to have a go at one of the Western occupiers, well, who did all the volunteers want to have a go at? It was obvious.
Or, not so obvious, is it? No, I can't bring my
Or
own
not
name
so
into
obvious,
this.
yes.
It's ridiculous. Anyway, but yes, so that's the whole thing with why Afghanistans hate us.
But that is it's also a sign of how rotten both our government was and also the media in actually researching this stuff, because surely the government must have known about this. Diplomatic circles who knew about that area must have surely told them, "Are you out of your mind?" But at the same time, this also never got communicated to the public, because once I heard of it, I thought, no, this is insane. This is absolutely insane. And therefore I thought, the British more than likely wouldn't have been particularly popular if they would have just said, oh, no, we'll sit this one out, particularly after 9/11. So going into Afghanistan as a fighting force, I think, would have been acceptable. But I think then after that, we should have got out immediately and let someone else do the peacekeeping. Not because we were trying to avoid losses, but just simply because it was insane.
We're a net negative, shall we say, in the area.
Yes.
Morale-wise. I do have a particular story I want to share, which has been going somewhat viral in the last couple of days. But I will just go through a couple more super chats whilst we're here. Yes. EC90 says 99% of Afghans want Sharia law. Democracy won. This is the other thing, it's frustrating to me, this idea that you can't. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. In the same way, like you can demonstrate democracy in your own land, you can't impose it on another country. It just doesn't work.
Yes,
On
the other hand side, they are clinging to aircraft taking off at the airport.
That's true. a few had died, didn't they? Three
Oh
fell.
yeah, there was a yes.
But what I mean is, if they're all wanting Sharia law, why are some of them clinging to aircraft taking off?
Yeah, because
I mean, like, there's a video of two, like, you see, like, two of them actually falling.
Yes.
But I thought it was fake at first because they disappear. But apparently it is actually real. And, like, there's photos of one of them where they landed, and it's pretty grim.
that's messy.
But yeah, there were, like, loads of them, clinging
Yes.
onto the planes.
Yes.
I have no
So
doubt. I have no doubt that it's a very scary time, and it's even everybody knows as much as anything else that regime change is not something without bloodshed and a very, very difficult it's not just political. There's going to be violence in the streets.
Well,
there's going to be counterinsurgencies. There's going to be
put it like this. I assume that most of our listeners, and I would assume that everybody on this panel, has seen the famous sort of meme of a photograph of a Taliban guy with a stick hitting some women in burqas.
Oh yeah, I've seen.
every weekend.
It's a sort of famous photograph that went around the world, and it kind of illustrates the treatment of women, but also the sort of high-handedness of what's the department called? They pretty much got it in every country in the Islamic world, isn't it? The Ministry for the Diminution of Vice and Promotion of Virtue, or something like that. They call it.
Yeah, it's the morality police.
And the
basically.
thing is, as we've seen some pictures come in from the Taliban arriving in Kabul, the guys in the black turbans holding whippy sticks with which they're lashing out at the population, they're already there again. I mean, I've seen them on film. So there hasn't been quite as iconic a picture yet of one of them laying into some women. But I've already seen, footage of these guys with sort of, they're sort of like very bendy canes, if you know what I mean.
Like kendo
whacking
sticks.
people who are in the way of traffic or something like that.
Yeah.
Switch.
So you look at these people and you just go, okay, this seems very familiar. So I think when it comes to the regime change, when they're sort of saying, in television interviews, oh no, we will respect the rights of women. Yeah, I take that with a pinch of salt, because they look very much like the last lot. I would say in one respect they might be somewhat different from when they were there last time round. To us as Westerners, they will still look absolutely horrible. But from some reports I've heard, in the provinces out there, some of the tribes kind of came on board with the Taliban as they were sweeping across the country, but insisted that their daughters would go to school. So some changes might manage to hang on. That is, unless the Taliban, once they have absolute power, just decide, no, we're not having that. But such details, I guess, just await to be seen, if you know what I mean.
I'm not particularly optimistic about their human rights record.
Well, I would also point out to all those people who kind of sort of say, oh, well, Trump had a deal and Biden broke it. The Taliban and sticking to deals, I'm sorry, folks, but...
They're a bit like a Nigerian prince over email who claims to want to send you money if only you'll give them a little more.
Yes. I mean, the situation was simply this, that the Taliban realized that it could seize complete power. It didn't need to negotiate, and it didn't need to share power. Now, it would have been the same, it would have come to the same realization with Trump taking troops out of Afghanistan as it would have done with Biden taking the troops out of Afghanistan. The moment the Western troops left, the Afghans, clearly the Taliban already had a plan in place. I mean, this stuff doesn't happen this quickly without a plan. So, yes, they never intended to stick by any deal. They immediately sought to seize power, and that's exactly what they did.
Indeed. Mr. Gently Benevolent says, do the Taliban think flaws are real?
Well, it depends if they've invented them yet. I think you need to talk to Mr. Cringewalker. Will be the expert on that thing.
I don't know
on
if
that particular question.
I don't know if they have.
What's the Father Ted? Given that they're so religious, you would have to say that's an ecumenical matter.
That's an ecumenical matter. Yes.
Did Allah have flaws?
That would be an ecumenical matter. Why? Yes, Imam. I believe it would, inshallah. Mad BZS.
I guess they do actually, because they play on a mat. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. Are mats a flaw? Or
Well, I guess they have moving floors.
You know, in the same way as a rug a flaw. You know, like I don't think so.
Is a flying carpet? Is a flying carpet a
I
flaw?
guess once you put a rug on like dirt, I guess that becomes a flaw then, doesn't it?
I mean, I would say
Does
that
it?
if you believe in flying carpets, then your intellect is flawed. But I don't know.
Well, you see, when it
You
comes
see there's
to
carpets in
Islam
place,
and flying carpets, that is rather an interesting aspect because when it comes to the whole thing of flying carpets, we are talking of the tales of Scheherazade, of the 1001 Nights, the tales of Arabian Nights.
Indeed.
And they are banned in just about most Islamic countries these days.
Unsurprisingly.
What is so remarkable is that this is their own culture. You know, if you think of the Arabian Nights, this is the equivalent of their Iliad or whatever. You know, these are their great tales. This is deeply embedded in the culture of the Middle East. And yet, they've banned their own culture. This is like us getting rid of the Arthurian legends.
Well,
I do believe we are decolonising our curriculum, British.
Yeah,
so
I believe we are literally in the process of doing this right now, British, my friend.
how long before the Oracle at Delphi becomes problematic for her stereotypical depiction of women in
No,
Greek?
no, hang on, that can't be because the Oracle was a woman.
Ah.
Yes, but she was there merely to serve as a tool for the men to use. And clearly this is
I'm not sure. I think you can sell that to the feminists.
How long until Humpty Dumpty?
You know, the Oracle was a woman, so you know, all the other the lesser folk they may have been male, but the Oracle was a woman.
She
I don't think you'd manage to.
She wasn't. She couldn't actually tell the future. She was just a massive Karen, and she just told everyone what to do.
On the note, mind, do you know they've made it? I think we discussed this. Did we discuss this about the Green Knight? They made him Indian.
Yes.
You.
Because they're culturally appropriating my culture there. Thank you very much.
They did the same with
Welsh.
Sir Gawain in
Yes, well, Sir Gawain, which is Sir Owain, and they turned him, that's cultural appropriation.
Well,
Man.
is that actually entirely Welsh culture, or would it be fair to say that is British?
Is derived from Welsh tales. The Arthurian legend is
I didn't realise the Welsh used to have tales.
We have many tales. It's called the Mabinogi.
They've got pronounced coccyxes.
Yes.
I have the.
I didn't quite click there that I was referring to them as somewhat animalistic. Sorry, right.
I was going to go on a bit of spiel like, oh yeah.
No, go.
I'm not sure I entirely agree with you in painting this as Welsh.
The legend says he's buried in Wales.
Yeah, buried in Snowdonia somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, legend has him in quite a few places.
Merlin's literally from my town. He's named after my town.
And I don't think that Reotamus necessarily was Welsh. I mean, he would have been an ancient Briton, but we have really no idea where he would be based. I think what you are doing is you're basically saying this is the pre-Saxon Britain, so therefore they're Welsh.
They are, because
I would say, to be Welsh, they would have to be situated, as we understand the term to be today, they would have to be situated in Wales.
well, the movement of people of the Romano Britons was into Wales. That's why for a long time Wales was simply known as Brythoniad, which just means the Britons.
Well, yes, but what I mean is, if these were the Romano Britons, as you call them, but he was based in Winchester.
The sass.
But he was based in Winchester. Is he therefore still Welsh?
He's of the Welsh. He's of Welsh culture, isn't he? Like, so the idea, like, there's areas of England such as like like say Cumbria, which used to be known as like Rheged or Hemoglev, which was part of the Welsh culture when the Saxons were here. Same with Elmet in Yorkshire, and you've got other areas like to an
Arthur
extent.
is a Welsh name. Arthur is a Welsh name.
It is. Yes. Doesn't it just mean king?
Brennan is king, so Brennanus. We actually our name for king comes from the Brennanus, the actual the tribal chief.
Well, I still think this is a bit strong, claiming the whole thing as Welsh. I will dig in here and refuse to accept this.
So like
How
again,
on earth have
conflation with Merlin comes from my town because Merlin himself is named Myrddin in Welsh, which comes from the so Carmarthen, which was known as Maradunum by the Romans, became so the Welsh used to add Caer in front of Roman town names. So, for example, an easy example would be Caerlegion, which was for Chester, and now it's just Caer. But and you also got Caerdydd, which is Cardiff and stuff like that. But they would also have kind of the Latin names as well after them. So you had Caer and Maradunum for a long time, and that eventually over time became Caer Myrddin, and then that split into so that Myrddin bit became a person's name of someone from Carmarthen, and then that eventually became.
Then he became
Merlin.
the second M in M&M's.
And then that eventually became Merlin. Yes. I'm trying to educate you, Britisher. That's the sass.
I like how we've gone from one desert-dwelling tribe to a mountain-dwelling tribe.
You're basically just claiming all ancient British history just simply as Welsh.
It's part of the Welsh dialogue. Is it not? Like the Mabinogion is very. It comes from all parts of Britain. Like, I claim it all as all British culture. British culture up to a point until the Saxon Chronicles and stuff, because Romano Britain or Pictic, I guess.
Owain, I'm going to stop you there simply because you're putting me to shame with your general knowledge.
Thank you.
I don't actually like the fact that I don't know half the stuff that you're telling me about, but but also in the interest of time. I do want us to get on to a couple of other bits and pieces and stay a little bit on topic. Although I'm sure if anybody is interested in Owain waxing lyrical in historical anecdotes in such a way, you can always check out the Foundation's podcast on his channel. So
thank you very much.
Yeah, a shameless shill there. Mad BCETI says, "Isn't Afghanistan kind of worthless? I understand the revenge aspect of killing Osama bin Laden, but after they wrecked the place and finally killed him, why stay at all?"
Yes. I mean, as such, Afghanistan has always had a sort of geopolitical role. It's a strategic point. So therefore, the powers have tended always to sort of quarrel over it. So, what you have to understand with a lot of imperialism is some of it is indeed about holding the territory so that you can profit from it. But some of the other territories you hold in order to deny the space to others, whether it be other powers or warlords or pirates or, you name it. And when it came to trying to occupy Afghanistan, it was always, seen as sort of the window into India or into Persia. And therefore, it is rather a remarkable sort of place in history.
You have you have to remember.
I think it's said that Alexander the Great was the last guy to actually win there.
Yeah, well, you have to remember as well that at the time, of course, we were in Iraq, and that was not going well. But there was discussion at the time when people were basically trying to make the decision to kind of pursue this beyond just a general campaign. There was talk about the fact that there was a link between effectively Turkey through Syria into Iraq through Afghanistan towards India, like a kind of Silk Road 3.0, and I call it that because of the internet one. But yeah, and then of course things went very, very badly in Iraq. Then it took us ages and ages and ages to find and kill Osama bin Laden. And then we also were trying to do all this other stuff in the meantime, because there's only so many resources that you can commit to hunting one man.
I think one of the things that one has to point out is the utter stupidity of both Bush Jr. and Blair. Because one did indeed go into Afghanistan first. Because 9/11, the attack came from Afghanistan. Not, as I said, not the Taliban, not Afghanistan officially, but Osama bin Laden and his training camps in the hills of Afghanistan. So we went in there, and we went in there first, and the troops went through the defences there like a knife through, hot knife through butter. And you have to imagine that we had every single asset trained on Afghanistan. And then, as we're mopping up there, the decision is, oh, you know what, we're just going to move everything to Iraq. We're going to invade there. And I think that was never a particularly good idea also, because you haven't finished the war yet. And then you start fighting somewhere else. So all the satellite time and whatever was now suddenly taken up by Iraq. So whereas previously every single intelligence asset and whatever was trained on Afghanistan, that was then suddenly put on the back burner. The troops were greatly reduced, and of course everything was concentrated onto Iraq, because that was the big thing. Now, as we know, they had nothing to do with 9/11, and there was no terrorist link, no matter what the governments of the day were claiming. But yes, one had never finished properly the Afghan war, and the Afghans the Taliban managed to revive as the pressure was loosened on them. They managed to adapt to a type of warfare that prior to that they were just being butchered. So we gave them enough of a breather to learn how to cope with us, and that was a frightful mistake.
Got a fresh meme in the chat if you want to put that up.
Sure. What have we got here? Live. Oh no. Oh no. Okay, right. Let me get this so people can enjoy it along with us. Yes, I shall put it up on the news viewer, as it were. Chaos at Kabul. Edit to transform. Amazing. Chaos at Kabul airport as Afghans try to flee Taliban, and then we've got got a lot of very strange imagery going on there.
Oh, Afghan dogs.
Yeah. Many
man.
Afghan dogs.
Are those actually, perhaps someone in the chat knows, are they actually named after being dogs from Afghanistan? Or is this just some name that was attributed to them somehow, but in fact they are entirely Western breeds?
Oh,
I have no
I
idea.
don't know.
Well,
but
they're
I have
from
this
Afghanistan.
map.
They're from Afghanistan.
So that they actually emerged from Afghanistan, did they?
Yes.
The chat's like, now if those were refugees, open the borders. So thanks.
So,
Yeah?
like,
Well,
They
next
were from the
you
desert.
will tell me that one of those is actually John Simpson dressed up as a dog.
oh, Dog World.
Afghan hound. There we go. It is from Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just posted a map in the stream chat of all the dogs around the world, and Britain has an insane amount of them.
Apparently.
Yeah, I mean, we have golden retrievers. We have.
I didn't know Labrador like I thought Labradors were from Labrador, but it's actually they're from Britain.
Well, this is why I ask whether Afghan dogs are really from Afghanistan.
Yeah, it's really strange.
I mean, a lot of dogs are named after where they come from. I mean, the Newfoundland is from Newfoundland. Although the English coonhound is apparently from North America.
Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? And it had to flee over here after betraying its brethren.
As I say, if it just gets associated with something, it might get a name that in fact has nothing to do with its immediate origin. And that's why I'm wondering, because surely it was largely the Europeans that were were responsible for most of these breeds.
Exactly like poodles, which bear no resemblance to noodles.
See, the worst thing is that the Australian Shepherd
That's
is
the
from
one thing
California.
I've always admired about you, Not So Obvious. It's that deep intellect of yours.
I don't know much about the gold standard Britisher, but I do love kittens.
Americans, stop naming dogs after places that you don't own.
I mean, that
Well, they would just say yet.
Yeah.
lots of
Yeah.
Welsh dogs.
Oh, well, of course we got the corgi.
Got
I
two corgis, Pembroke and Cardigan.
And one of my favourite breeds, the Welsh Springer Spaniel.
Of all the discussions that I thought we would have tonight, moving from Afghanistan to dog breeds was not one of them.
There's a Springer Spaniel that lives next door to me, and she's actually friends with Cammy, and it's it's the most adorable thing. Like seeing this, she's a big kitten, but she'll follow her around, and she'll actually rub up on her.
Yeah.
Which, there's proper sign of affection from a cat. It's one of the sweetest things ever.
So we got
Cammy's best friend is a dog.
I got an old English sheepdog. We got two of them, crossed with golden retriever, and we got a puppy as well now, and it's literally his little brother, 2 years younger than him, and it's hilarious because the older dog, when his little brother jumps up on someone and the person doesn't want them on there, he'll pull him off and be like, "No, you don't do that," and he started teaching him little things. And he's taught him how to go up and down stairs and everything. It's great.
Discipline.
And he's teaching him how to bark now. That's the way.
Wait, there's a dog from Africa that's apparently called Slough.
What?
There's a dog from Slough in deepest, darkest Africa.
Look at the Africa bit underneath Egypt. There's a dog, a dog that looks like a greyhound on that map.
Oh, yeah, it's called Slowy.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I used to have a Rhodesian Ridge.
Oh, there's an eye. I thought it was called Slough.
So growing up, my dog was a Rhodesian Ridgeback, and he was beautiful. Big dog as well. He could jump at, basically anything. It was insane.
Have you ever had dogs, Britisher?
No.
Oh.
The one thing I always think of when I think about dogs is when it comes to hang on, I've just lost something here. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. When it comes to dogs, I always, I think it was some stand-up comic that once made this gag, and I have no idea who it was anymore, but perhaps someone in the chat knows. Someone was sort of saying, if the aliens are out there and they're watching us, and they see these four-legged creatures walking about, and the two-legged creatures walking behind them, picking up their poo and putting them in bags, who are they going to think are the masters?
Well, at the same time, who's going to think about, cats have also got this going on, but also so as very Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, perhaps cars run everything,
The rats, isn't it?
There's something else. There's something else that I've noticed with this map as well, which makes it even better. Look to the bottom left.
Oh my god, there's seals on it.
Yeah. There's seals all over the map. If you look to the top right,
Oh my god, because they're sea dogs.
There's more seals.
Because they're sea dogs. That's because they're the dogs of the sea.
Oh, it's more that dogs are the seals of the land.
Oh well, I don't know why you haven't printed this off yet, Rose, and just put it on your wall.
Well, I'm thinking I'm gonna have to. I mean, it's got the seals of the world.
What was that animal again that was much cuter than a seal?
There isn't really anything cute in that seal. I don't know what you're talking about.
So I just
Of
wanna
course
know-
you don't. Yes.
I guess another thing here, the Great Dane is not from Denmark. This is terrible.
That's what makes it a Great Dane.
It's from Germany. Of course the Germans annexed the Great Dane. Terrible. And also, I don't know. You know what? I think enough dog talk.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen. That Indian dude says, well, this is regarding Afghanistan. This is a region where India is seen comparatively in a positive light. So you know how foobar the entire region is. Yeah, India's getting better, but yes. EC90,
Well-
yeah.
I was going to say the future of democracy is India.
Well,
in
it's
some
the
way.
largest English-speaking country in the world. So of course
Yeah.
it is. EC90 says, isn't Helmand province where they make the mayo? That's why it's Helmand. Helmand.
Yeah,
Duh,
yeah,
duh.
yes.
As opposed to- What's your opinion on mayo, Britisher?
I am pro mayo. As you know, as long as it's done within reason.
And do you
What wasn't it?
mayo versus salad cream?
It was invented by a ship's cook, I believe.
Well,
It was a French admiral's cook who
what?
created the sauce to for a meal to celebrate his master's conquest of the port of, was it Mahon, or was it, I don't know, Mahon, Mayo, or something like that, and hence it became La Mayonnaise.
Well,
La mayonnaise with Monsieur. Sorry.
So yes, I mean, foodstuffs are named after the strangest possible things. So yes, the conquest of a port created mayonnaise, if I remember correctly.
mayonnaise is just egg white.
So who knows? Perhaps in future there will be a Kabul sauce that the Taliban invent.
I'm being told
But
that
I won't be holding my breath.
I'm being told that apparently I know nothing about India as it currently stands. I mean, I've got friends from India, and I've got friends who are from the Tamil region of India, and that seems to be doing okay. It's kind of like the less religious part of it, but I mean, I wouldn't say my knowledge of India is that great, although I do know that sanitation
the
is a huge
Tamils, wasn't that just in the news recently? There was a news story that some vlogger, went viral because she refused to use the word curry. It goes
What?
without saying she's Californian, and she was
of
she's some kind of online chef.
Completely nonsense.
And she refused to use the word curry because it was colonial.
Well,
So
what
We're,
would
we're
you-
back
what-
to
But
certain people not liking
I-
colonialism again.
I just want to make a point to me and Ennis, not knowing anything about India, is that didn't stop us before.
And just
We'll learn as we go.
The reason the Tamils figure is because I believe it's from a Tamil word called kari that the British took curry.
I see. Okay.
So it's not actually anything that we invented, and as she insisted is not at all known in India. It's just simply we mispronounced it.
I would love to see her go into an Indian curry shop in the UK and say you can't call it curry anymore, and watch her get booted out.
To be fair,
be hilarious.
most of the curry shops in Britain are run by Bangladeshis, so
Bangladeshis, yeah, you get the
this
occasional
is-
real Indian one.
This is this is the case with a lot of people who get upset. They're always getting upset on someone else's behalf, aren't they? When it comes to the Bangladeshis, they are just East Bengal. So West Bengal is in India, and East Bengal is in Bangladesh, and it's the Bengalis that are the ones who are responsible for a lot of the cuisine, because that was one of the richest parts of India.
See, every day's a school day with Uncle Britisher here. But you didn't answer my...
I think the superior one would actually be the mayonnaise-like frites sauce.
Well, you can always
that you
pretty
get
much
from the Netherlands.
create your own salad cream as long as you have mayonnaise. So.
Both of them.
See, I'm not a huge fan of salad cream, but I do like mayonnaise and I do really like frite sauce.
Sorry, what sauce?
What is...
Frite sauce. It's from the Netherlands. It's kind of like mayonnaise.
Are you one of these horrible people that eats chips with mayonnaise?
Anything with mayonnaise.
Well, I'd have frite sauce if I'm in the Netherlands.
You see, the Belgians invented chips as such. They claim the invention, and they eat it with mayonnaise.
Chips and
the
mayo
rest
do
of
go.
the world just watches aghast. Yes.
Mayo,
Salt and
chips
vinegar.
with mayonnaise and chili sauce. That combination goes really well together.
So, chips and gravy, best combination. Love chips and gravy.
Salt and vinegar, and I will hear no more on it. It's
Oh,
my
vinegar,
show.
yes, I think
It's my show. It's
I
my
am
show.
with Not So Obvious here, Salt and Vinegar by Miles.
Chips and...
Stop
Talk about curry, though.
ingratiating
Chips and curry
yourself
sauce
with me,
would be
Britisher.
very nice.
You've also got habits which I can't stand. Salt and vinegar it is. And that's it. None of this
We don't have somewhere...
none of this bare bones gravy nonsense. None of this hoity-toity posh frite sauce nonsense. No.
Just from the Netherlands. Like, I wouldn't have it with chippy chips, but I would have it with French fries.
Oh,
Chips and gravy, man.
Using Americanisms in here as well. Ugh. Okay, moving on.
Freedom fries! They're freedom fries.
Oh, shut up!
Skinny.
Yeah, we shall never forget the freedom fries. This is another hark back to George W. Bush. It shows again how ridiculous the tribes can be politically when they feel wronged. So because the French didn't want to join in invading Iraq, one didn't want to serve French fries in the capital. So they became listed on the menu as freedom fries.
Well, isn't it?
And yes, some of this stuff you really can't make up.
I mean, I tried to make a joke basically where it was like freedom fries Afghanistan, but no. Right. Artful Lodger says,
It depends on how many Moabs you've got.
Is Ali Jalali a moderate?
Who is Ali Jalali?
That's what I want to know. I was hoping one of you would. Ali Jalali is... the next Afghanistan chief under the Taliban. Okay. Ali Ahmed Jalali is the new interim head of the Afghan government, essentially. Under the Taliban. So there we go. Is he a moderate? I'm really sorry, Artful Lodger, because this is clearly a serious question, and you weren't just sending us a silly name. But I did want to...
Mind you, it does sound similar to Omid Jalili, doesn't it? Perhaps we can sneak him in and have him pretend to be the Taliban leader and no one will realise.
Oh, no, wait. Ali Jalali is an Afghan politician, diplomat and academic. He was the Minister of the Interior and studied at, funnily enough, the Near East South Asia Center for Strategic Studies at the National Defense University in Washington, D.C. He was rumoured to become the leader of the Taliban-controlled interim Afghan government, but he has denied this as fake news. So, very, very strange. I'm really unsure. I'm not familiar with any of his particular policies anyway, but one would assume that he's fairly sympathetic to the US, given some of his credentials and how he's made a living, etc. As a kind of reporter with Voice of America covering Afghanistan, Central and South Asia.
Well, considering that you completely ignored my quip, I assume you also have no idea who Omid Jalili is.
Yes.
He's a comedian.
Oh, yes, I know the one. Yes.
He's also a very big Chelsea fan.
Iranian background, background. I remember when he first started out, he had this wonderful gag where he would walk onto the stage and he would be there, bearded, and he would look at them and scowl a bit and going, "I am from Iran, but don't worry, I'm not armed."
Yes, he's done several big things, hasn't he? Where they kind of play off his.
In quite a few films, yes, and he was in Gladiator.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember, because I can picture him in several roles, but I just can't remember what films they are. And as I haven't seen Gladiator, I wouldn't be picturing him in that. Maran Gatu says, "This isn't This Week in History." At the point where we were talking about what had gone on in Afghanistan historically. Thank you for that, Maragatu. That Indian dude says, "Afghanistan actually has reserves of rare earth minerals. The Chinese have an eye on it. The Chinese have also got a port with a road linking it to China."
There is some talk that there's lithium there.
Yes. But how accessible it is with the current climate.
How much lithium compared to that compared to the fact that in some parts of South America there are vast lithium deposits. One then needs to ask oneself whether one really wants to go out of one's way to mine Afghan lithium.
It doesn't. It doesn't matter where it is or how.
Taliban looking over your shoulder.
It doesn't matter how much there is or where it is, as long as it's not where we are. So that's someone will profit somehow.
I gotta mention this now. It was a super chat who came in with Cringe Walker.
No. We're getting to that.
Okay.
We're getting to that. Don't you worry.
He's savouring it, whatever it is.
It's the name of this entire stream is based around this story. So
I'm expecting it to be a really good super chat then.
It's a really good story in general. JVB says, "May God keep you away from the venom of the cobra, the teeth of the tiger, and the revenge of the Afghans. Alexander the Great." I don't know if that's a real quote, but if it is, then it certainly sounds it's like something impressive, doesn't it?
I'm afraid you cut out there briefly, so I didn't actually catch that.
I said, "May God keep you away from the venom of the cobra, the teeth of the tiger, and the revenge of the Afghans, Alexander the Great." I don't know if that's a real quote, but if it is, it sounds mighty impressive, doesn't it?
It would sound mighty impressive, but I don't know. This doesn't sound like Alexander to me.
The Britisher has spoken, I'm afraid, JVB. So, source. Jedi Knight and a Cringewalker.
Sauce, mayonnaise.
"I'm going to kill you, Britisher, one of these days."
Hey, you did ask.
Jedi Knight and a Cringewalker says, "A British student has apparently got out of the Taliban's prison by saying he was from Wales instead of Britain. They didn't know where Wales was." This is, of course, the stories of Lord Miles Rutledge. He's not a real lord, but he did talk the talk. And his holiday to Afghanistan that began at the beginning of the middle of last week and is ending rather abruptly now. But and is the name for this stream, i.e. Mad Lad in Afghan edition. So it was brought to my attention there was a thread which was going sort of semi-viral on the Twitter sphere, which I will now put up actually on the stream so that everyone can see it. And essentially, is this going to work? Is it going to work? Sort of. I'm going to minimize, edit, transform this, and make it bigger for us all. So let's cut off about that, and then let's cut off about that, and then let's make it nice and large, shall we? And then people can read along with me. So it says, "There's currently a British guy called Lord Miles in Kabul having a wonderful time." And essentially he was on 4chan and saying he decided to pop down to Afghanistan for a few days. This is sort of Friday the 13th. "Never been before, just goofing off, soaking in the sun, seems more peaceful than London to me. Ask me anything." People ask for the timestamp, he provides one, etc. he says, if the Taliban kidnap me, the plan is simple. I'm legally, technically a lord. I bought a fake certificate, wore a suit into a bank and talked the talk. So it says Lord on all my bank cards. The Taliban may see this as reason enough to keep me alive, thinking it may hold some negotiating power, as they'll think I'm important. Let's hope it doesn't get to that stage. And he says he's going to either stay there permanently in a grave or leave on the 19th. And there are pictures of him in parts of Kabul and sitting on armoured vehicles and so on and so forth. And then he ended up live streaming from a safe house because, of course, he thought that it was all going to kick off within the next 30 days, but not whilst he was there. And then everything started rolling in, and he had to find an embassy, then a safe house, then the airport, and then had to flee the airport and go back to the safe house. Whereupon he live streamed himself being there and saying, if I either kind of get out and live to tell a tale with massive balls, or I die here, I guess. Just seems absolutely nuts. It just so much stuff. He's been told that he was told 13 hours ago he would be given body armor and emergency evacuated to a better place, as all compounds are to be abandoned. And he's with the soldiers now, getting him out there. And
the face of him.
Yeah. He looks like he is a. He claims to be at least a banker, like an investment banker, and just this absolutely insane story. But I mean, what a story if you do manage to get out. I mean, who does that?
Well, it will be quite a book deal, won't it?
Maybe.
I was watching a bit of his live stream that he did on Twitch a couple of days ago, and he mentioned things about like having to run away at times, kind of like run away from the Taliban, and he was actually saying that he really enjoyed it. Well, he is actually like running away from the Taliban with a massive smile on his face, and like he actually enjoyed doing it. So I think he's having the time of his life right now.
It doesn't surprise me at all. He seems quite insane.
As you were sort of running up to this story, you mentioned prisons briefly. And this just put a smile on my face, because yesterday they were kind of having some interviews. Perhaps it was the day before yesterday, I think. They had some interviews on the BBC where a BBC correspondent was interviewing people who were kind of failed terrorists who had been, picked up by the authorities and locked up in prison. And they were sort of being interviewed about, how they had tried to do this or that for the Taliban. And as they were being interviewed, I was sitting there going, you're in prison in Kabul. Something tells me you're not going to be in prison much longer. Of course, no sooner did they get to Kabul, the first thing the Taliban did was open the prisons. So yes, it's an interesting one. So yes, these were people who were locked up for trying to blow up embassies or things like that. There was one particular guy who they sent to try and blow up a girls' school. And yes, so basically they were in prison for a while the Taliban was moving towards them, and then yes, no sooner was the Taliban there, they let them all out.
Amazing. Just yeah.
But it was just funny that I was watching this thinking, oh, you're not going to have to wait much longer, and I didn't know just how true what I was thinking at the time was going to become. But yes, it was almost comical that within 24 hours of my seeing that interview, these people would more than likely be on the streets of Kabul.
Well,
on that note, yes.
on that note, but yeah. So, what do we make of this absolute mad lad? Do you think it's just a case of 4chanism, where he's just completely oblivious to any danger that he's actually in?
Yes, he's. I think he's just oblivious to a bit ignorant of danger. He's obviously an eccentric.
Can I be the total skeptic here and ask, is he even real?
Yeah. Well, he provided.
Could this be some picture footage or whatever that was actually taken at a different time, that perhaps isn't even the person claiming to be him or whatever?
Well,
that is now being spun into some interesting yarn.
Well, he fully doxed himself. He has the whole Facebook account with like all the friends and family, etc., etc. It wasn't created last week. He's been contacted by the Sun, apparently.
Oh well, then it must be true.
So, well, and he's in the Times as well, although I don't think they got a line on him. And of course, they're reaching out to the UN and the embassy for comment, etc., etc.
I can't. Have we mentioned how he got out of getting imprisoned?
No, well, he claims that he was questioned on the way to the airport by Taliban, and he, instead of saying he was from Britain, he said he was from Wales, and they didn't know where it was, so they let him go. Yeah.
It's like everywhere, you find it. They don't know.
Nobody knows.
It's because it's just a word that means foreigner. Like, they just don't know. Like, could be anywhere, really, couldn't it? I'm from a distant land.
To be fair, these people who test the British so much have no clue about Wales. So you can just go about. So we can just be like, this is what the Welsh get away with. This is how we're the friendliest people on the planet, because nobody knows who we are, and everyone just thinks we're these really happy sounding people.
The way to win Eurovision is to stop calling ourselves British and just send Owain with a flag of Wales, and then
I'm telling you, Wales could win Eurovision.
All the time, will we?
We'd just be like, we'd just sing Welsh songs, and we'd be like, yeah, we'll get a Welsh male voice choir, and they will win Eurovision.
I was going to say
that was believed to be the secret behind the Irish winning it all the time, to the point where eventually they didn't want to win it anymore because it was costing them too much to put it on. The secret was believed to be the fact that the Irish had never been at war with anybody.
So you send the Welsh in, and everyone will be like, oh, le Pays de Galles, Wales, Gales. They'd be like, yeah, wonderful. That's so awesome. Because that's
happened before. Like I can tell what you dream about now, Owain. Like, you go to sleep and you're like, if only we could sing Eurovision. If only people would recognise us for the greatness that we have. But no, everybody just makes bloody sheep jokes.
Rose understands what I mean, though.
Well, I mean, she fled, so you know.
Well, like I wouldn't mind moving back to Wales in like a couple of years. Like, I'm only really in England now because my job demands it.
Look,
if I could move back to Wales, I probably would at this point.
I need the opinion of my fellow comrades.
Rose, don't forget, we plan to glass Wales at some point in the near future, and it's important.
What was it? What was it in Top Gear's manifesto? It was to turn Wales into one giant racetrack.
To be fair, Wales is pretty gorgeous in the right weather, and it would make an excellent racetrack. Yeah, I'm thinking of like all the region around like Llanberis, and Llanbedr.
Yeah,
Llanberis
and Llanbedr, yeah.
Okay, just because I didn't. I'm sorry. But apparently, I mean, the Welsh apparently are the biggest free thinkers that we have, given how overrepresented they are in our current movement.
We have 1,000 years of a head start on this stuff.
What, on being dissident?
So,
when have the Welsh ever rebelled?
There was a guy called Owain Glyndŵr who I'm named after. That was the last time we rebelled, and that was kind of like 1450, I think.
So you've had over 500 years, and you haven't rebelled in any of that time. One would say that we domesticated you.
No. There was the Merthyr rebellions, which was a kind of socialist uprising in Merthyr Tydfil and all that stuff. And there was a Rebecca riot, which was a lot of farmers rioting against the English taxing the roads, based.
Sorry, just to interrupt there. Speaking of road tax, have you heard of? Is it America? I think it's Biden wants to bring it in, a a per mile driven tax. Per mile driven tax. Essentially, all cars will be either fitted with GPS, or it will use the GPS on your phone, and if it detects that you're driving in your vehicle, you'll be charged. Effectively, every road becomes a toll road.
This sounds like complete political suicide in the US. I would think you could sooner tamper with people's guns than with their cars in the US.
Biden. Oh, it's reverses on this. Okay, here we are. This is Biden administration. This is from Forbes. The Biden White House has reversed course on two major policies during the first week of August. Joe Biden conceded that when it comes to extending the CDC's temporary eviction moratorium, the bulk of the constitutional scholars say it's not likely to pass constitutional muster. And then he said that he was going to walk back plans for a per mile vehicle tax. Yeah, so that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I would say sort of surely America is sort of the ultimate car culture.
Yes, they don't walk anywhere.
Yeah, and therefore, if you start taxing, I mean, you know, they complain about petrol prices, which over here would be laughably cheap.
Yes.
So yes, I think if you try and make driving cars more expensive, or particularly if you have this intention of tracking and following what they do in their cars, I really don't. I think that's an absolute non-starter. Irrespective of whether it's legal for a government to bring that in, I would say politically that's suicidal.
Well, again, they'll just cheat again. And I'm saying that deliberately to rile you up, Britisher. Is it working?
No.
Well, I suppose that's something of a positive. Anyway.
Mayonnaise. See, I'm better at this.
No, because I'm not riled in the slightest, And neither are my guests, of course, who are the picture of politeness.
Exactly.
On that note, I think I'm going to bring us to a close. I think it is time to end. But I hope that everybody has enjoyed our little both trip down memory lane and discussion of the general situation in Afghanistan, even if we do remember that this is somewhat of an entertainment stream and there's not a great deal of specific analysis going on. Artful Lodger has chimed in with a last second super chat to say, when do we get the Department of Incel Intel regarding 4chan? Well, we already have that in the form of the of journalists who were voted recently as one of the least attractive professions for a man to hold. Appreciate it's one of these silly women's magazines polls, but that's apparently the truth. And then, of course, they determined that Miles Rutledge had a 4chan account, which is for those people who know what 4chan is, a bit of an oxymoron, given the state of the thing. So, it already exists, Artful Logic. You just need to know where to look. So, thank you very much to my guests for joining this evening, especially to Owine and to Rose of Dawn, who have come on at request, and for making the stream very much more enjoyable for them being here. Thank you, guys.
No problem at all. Thanks for inviting me on.
Always happy to be on.
Wonderful, and thanks.
I'll drag myself here.
Yes, Britisher. It's always a pleasure to have you with me as well. It's an honour and a privilege. All right, ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful week. I will see you all on Thursday for my stream with Aidan Paladin on a scientific journal article called On Having Whiteness, and it is as cringy as you can imagine. So if you love peak cringe and a little bit of science, then do tune into that. And otherwise, we'll see you next Monday for another edition of Fake Accents Unite. Take care, everyone, and good night.
Bye.